The biggest mistakes people make is if they try to find one person who's going to solve all their needs.
Yes.
I think that's a huge mistake. And I think a lot of people think that what they need is like a mini version of them. No, that's not what you need. What you need is someone who wants to do all the things that you don't want to do. So it's like actually the opposite of you.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Now in today's episode, you'll meet Brad Farris. He is a business coach to $1 million businesses. So he helps businesses to scale from $1 million to $5 million. Now he too has scaled his business by using outsourcing. So he's hired virtual assistants to help him grow his business, and he's going to share with you on how he got started, what are the best ways to work with VAs. Yeah, Brad, tell me about your journey and when you decided that you needed a VA, and what was your concerns before you hired one?
Ooh. That's a really great question. So I was about 4 years into my business and I was starting to get successful to the point where I had more money than time, right? So I was starting to run out of time. And I hired a coach to help me. I felt like I was bumping up against the ceiling. And so I hired a coach to get over some things. And right away, she's like, what are you doing all this stuff? Like, you gotta stop doing this stuff. And so she made me do a time track where I looked at every hour of the day and what I was doing that hour. And the first thing I found out was that I was spending 20% of my time, a whole day a week, trying to schedule people onto my calendar. And, you know, that dance back and forth of like, can you do this time? Can you do that time? And this was before Calendly, but even with Calendly, I was driving out and meeting people. So I had this complicated, like, how long does it take me to get from this place to that place? And so it was a problem. And as soon as I discovered that, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't spend 20% of my time on this stupid task. I need to find someone to take this. And so that got me started on that whole thing.
And not only time consuming, I think it also drained your energy. It's just not something that's
I hated it.
For you.
Yeah, I hated it. It was the last thing I wanted to do. Not only did I hate it, I was not very good at it. And so I was annoying my clients, I was annoying me, and it was keeping me from making money. Like it was just a no-brainer to get rid of it.
Yeah. And I remember talking to you, you were talking about local virtual assistants, right? Someone in the US.
Yes. That particular VA was 30 miles away from me, but I never met her. Like I met her once a year. I'd take her out for Christmas or something. And once I realized that even though she was a half an hour's drive, I never saw her. Then that got me thinking, well, who cares where they are?
Yeah. So prior to that, did you have a limiting belief that you kind of feel like you need to be next to someone to get the job done?
Well, actually, it's worse than that, because after I had the VA for a couple of years, I felt like there was a bunch of stuff in my office that I needed someone to do. And so I fired my VA and I hired an in-office assistant so that I could just like dump stuff onto her desk. And that worked for a couple of years. But the problem with hiring someone is that now you have HR problems, right? Like when she gets sick, when she doesn't show up, I have to upgrade her computer. And now I'm into now I hired her to get stuff off my plate. And now she's putting all this stuff back on my plate again that I don't want to do. So that didn't work out.
Gotcha. So then now this is like you're wondering more around the ongoing costs. So it's like it was when you work with a self-employed VA, they are like their own business. So they're kind of responsible for their own taxes and whatever it needs for them to work, right?
And not just a self-employed VA. I do have, of the people that I'm working with now, one or two of them are self-employed, but I'm leaning more now toward hiring through a service where if someone's not showing up for work, it's their problem. Like, go find me someone to fix this problem. Because I'm willing to pay more to not have to worry about any of the HR issues that I'm going to have with that person.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we do at Outsourcing Angel. We're an agency. So it's if you just want a hands-off approach, and we deal with, it's like an outsourced HR department that you're not just hiring a VA, you're hiring a department of people that's going to manage. So in terms of your VA services that you've tried directly freelancing, you've tried also packages of, I guess, when you're talking about these agencies, is it like when you prepaid certain number of hours?
Yeah,
and then,
usually that's the way it goes.
And then you just use up the hours and you're dedicated to this. You have one VA that you're assigned to?
Yes. So the current situation that I have a US-based VA who is like my project manager. And then the service that she works for also has a group of Philippine VAs. And so she will take some of those, she'll do some of that work herself, but some of it she'll send out to them. And the great thing to me about that, so prior to hiring her, I had one person doing my accounting, one person doing my calendar, one person doing my website, another person doing graphic design and that sort of stuff. And that worked out great, actually, because I could hire the best person for the job. But in my new situation, she has all those people. And so instead of me maintaining all those relationships and paying 5 different people, I just give it to Nicole and she makes all that stuff happen. And so that's been a more ideal situation for me.
Okay. Yeah. This reminds me of my first agency's business. So 10 years ago when I launched my business, what I was technically doing was I was that local VA.
Yeah, you were exactly.
And I have a team of Filipinos that I do. Right. Clients don't want to know. They just know that look, your service is still very affordable because I get to access designers and whoever else, and you just manage it all. So I really like that you've gone down this path as well. Have you ever worked directly with Filipino VAs or anything like that?
I have not. I did have a Lithuanian VA that I worked with for a long time. She was excellent. I really enjoyed working with her. She eventually got so busy that she didn't really keep up with what I needed. And then she took a full-time job and kind of left me in the middle of a website redesign. That was one of the situations that made me think, an agency would be helpful in this situation.
Yeah. With all the people that come to you and they've never heard of VAs before, like what have you seen that is the reason why? Like, are they hesitant or they just never heard of it before?
It's so funny. There's 2 questions that people ask me about VAs. One is, how do I hire one? And the other one is, what am I going to use them for? And they're saying, what am I going to use them for? I'm like, well, why are you asking me that question? Like, are there problems that you need solved? If there are, that's something a VA can do for you. What do you not want to do? What is wasting your time? What are you not getting done because it's no fun for you to do and it's just piling up on the side of your desk? Like, those are all things that VAs can do for you. And personally, there's almost nothing that I've found that I couldn't turn over to a VA if I created a system and was able to train somebody to do it. I mean, I think the biggest mistakes people make is if they try to find one person who's going to solve all their needs.
Yes.
I think that's a huge mistake. And I think a lot of people think that what they need is like a mini version of them. No, that's not what you need. What you need is someone who wants to do all the things that you don't want to do. So it's like actually the opposite of you.
Yeah. Great point. And in terms of training, like looking back at working with your VAs, like how did you manage to, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I first started working with people from overseas or even here, I didn't know what I was doing. So I made a lot of mistakes because I was just doing whatever I didn't know. But looking back, like what do you wish that you could have done better with when you first started with the VAs?
So when I first started with a VA, I felt like I had to have a very detailed procedure so that people would know step by step exactly what I wanted them to do. And that's very helpful if you can produce that. There's nothing wrong with that, except that creates a really high burden for you to be able to pass anything off to anybody. Like the work of getting the procedure done then prevents you from passing things off. And the other thing that I realized was I was making the assumption that the people that I was working with weren't very smart. But they were really smart. Like I saw over and over again that they were figuring stuff out. And so I got much better at saying, look, this is the outcome that I want to achieve. And these are sort of like the boundaries. I want it to take this amount of time and cost this amount of money. And I don't want to have these kind of mistakes. You come back to me with a procedure. How do you think it's going to work? And I've been so surprised that they've come up with way better ideas than I would come up with.
Yeah. So back then you kind of felt that you had to have a lot of detail and then you kind of didn't get started. Now, when you have something that you're spending a lot of time with, do you straight away then just go, hey, I'm so busy, what can you do here? And then let them work out how they can solve it?
So actually one secret for me has been I set up a weekly face-to-face meeting with my VA team. And that means that I know that there's a time when I'm going to see them. And so during the week, when there's something that's messing around in the back of my head, I just write it down. And then when I see them on Tuesday, I'm like, hey, who wants to take on this? What ideas do you guys have about this? And I can just kind of throw some things out there and get people's gears turning on stuff. Now I forgot your question, but
Yeah. Don't worry about that now. And now in terms of the VAs, you said that you have like 2 or something that's from an agency. One is kind of, is it direct or something? How is it working for you that they're all coming from different places?
So my bookkeeper worked for an agency and the agency went out of business. But she wanted to keep working with me and I wanted to keep working with her. And so we just work directly now. But she's been doing my books for 15 years. Like, I mean, I don't know, a long time. So we have a trust relationship. Is my bookkeeper. So she pays herself. You know, it's kind of easy. Like the whole thing.
She presses her own payment button. Yes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then Nicole, I work with through an agency. And like I said, she is backed up by the Philippine team. And then Carmen just does my calendar. I work with her directly, but she has one task. She's really great at it. And we just have a rhythm that really works. And she sells me a block of hours that I generally use up every month. And it's just fine. Works.
Yeah. And so they all kind of are working on a package basis or none of them are like kind of full time. And yet you're able to arrange weekly meetings as if you are like a embedded team together.
Yeah. The bookkeeper just has a flat monthly fee. I don't care how many hours she works. And we all just hook up 8:45 on Tuesdays for 20 or 30 minutes. It doesn't take a long time, but everybody checks in and we get to see each other and it helps them. The other thing that happens in the weekly meeting is that I remember that they're people and they remember that I'm a person. And so we don't get all wound up with each other about little petty stuff that can build up if you're not just talking and shooting the breeze with one another from time to time.
Yeah. And you just made me think of 2 points here. Number one is most people understand what a bookkeeper is or accountant or whatever it is. Yeah. And they are, I mean, a lot of them, obviously you outsource to them and you don't sit next to them. So they are like a virtual assistant. But the moment it's outside of bookkeeping, people don't understand the word virtual assistant. They think like, what are they going to do? Well, they're just people that can solve certain problems, right? And I think, And so I think that's a really great point that you considered your bookkeeper is a virtual assistant that does bookkeeping. That's right. The next point is that you really treated each one of them, even if they are just hourly, certain blocks of hours and not full-time, and yet they are treated as your internal team that needs to catch up and like one another and like you as the boss so that they can perform well, right?
The other thing that happens when they meet each other is that they talk to each other when I'm not around, which is good that they can complain to each other about what a lousy boss I am or whatever. But they also like troubleshoot with one another. Like, hey, Brad wants me to do this thing. I don't know how to do it. Do you know someone that can help me? And so it just makes the whole thing stronger by having them kind of connected.
Yeah, totally. I really love that, Brad. Well, thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions or comments for me, love to hear in the comments below. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this type of video, I have more for you here.